America must remain a beacon to all who seek freedom during this period of historic change. I saw the power of hope last year in Rangoon, in Burma, when Aung San Suu Kyi welcomed an American president into the home where she had been imprisoned for years. When thousands of Burmese lined the streets waving American flags, including a man who said, "There is justice and law in the United States. I want our country to be like that." Defense of freedom will remain the anchor of strong alliances from the Americas to Africa, from Europe to Asia. In the Middle East, we will stand with citizens as they demand their universal rights and support stable transitions to democracy. We know the process will be messy, and we cannot presume to dictate the course of change in countries like Egypt. But we can and will insist on respect for the fundamental rights of all people. We'll keep the pressure on a Syrian regime that has murdered its own people, and support opposition leaders that respect the rights of every Syrian. We will stand steadfast with Israel in pursuit of security and a lasting peace. These are the messages I'll deliver when I travel to the Middle East next month. And all this work depends on the courage and sacrifice of those who serve in dangerous places at great personal risk. Our diplomats, our intelligence officers, and the men and women of the United States Armed Forces. As long as I'm Commander-in-Chief, we will do whatever we must to protect those who serve their country abroad, and we will maintain the best military the world has ever known. We'll invest in new capabilities, even as we reduce waste and wartime spending. We will ensure equal treatment for all service members and equal benefits for their families, gay and straight. We will draw upon the courage and skills of our sisters, daughters, moms, because women have proven under fire that they are ready for combat. We will keep faith with our veterans, investing in world-class care, including mental health care, for our wounded warriors. Supporting our military families, giving our veterans the benefits and education and job opportunities that they have earned. I want to thank my wife, Michelle, and Dr. Jill Biden for their continued dedication to serving our military families as well as they have served us. Thank you, honey. Thank you, Jill. Defending our freedom, though, is not just the job of our military alone. We must all do our part to make sure our God-given rights are protected here at home. That includes one of the most fundamental rights of a democracy, the right to vote.
This is 89.3 KPCC, and AP is confirming that a charred body has been found in the rubble of that burned-out cabin in the Big Bear area. We will have more on the Christopher Dorner story right after the President's State of the Union address. This is KPCC.
Are denied that right because they can't afford to wait for 5 or 6 or 7 hours just to cast their ballot. We are betraying our ideals. So So tonight I'm announcing a nonpartisan commission to improve the voting experience in America. And it definitely needs improvement. I'm asking two longtime experts in the field who, by the way, recently served as the top attorneys for my campaign and for Governor Romney's campaign, to lead it. We can fix this, and we will. The American people demand it, and so does our democracy. Of course, what I've said tonight matters little if we don't come together to protect our most precious resource, our children. It has been 2 months since Newtown. I know this is not the first time this country has debated how to reduce gun violence. But this time is different. Overwhelming majorities of Americans who believe in the Second Amendment, have come together around common sense reform, like background checks that will make it harder for criminals to get their hands on a gun. Senators of both parties are working together on tough new laws to prevent anyone from buying guns for resale to criminals. Police chiefs are asking our help to get weapons of war and massive ammunition magazines off our streets because these police chiefs, they're tired of seeing their guys and gals being outgunned. Each of these proposals deserves a vote in Congress. If you want to vote no, that's your choice. But these proposals deserve a vote. Because in the 2 months since Newtown, more than 1,000 birthdays, graduations, anniversaries have been stolen from our lives by a bullet from a gun. More than 1,000. One of those we lost was a young girl named Idea Pendleton. She was 15 years old. She loved fig Newtons and lip gloss. She was a majorette. She was so good to her friends, they all thought they were her best friend. Just 3 weeks ago, she was here in Washington with her classmates, performing for her country at my inauguration. And a week later, she was shot and killed in a Chicago park after school, just a mile away from my house. Idea's parents, Nate and Cleo, are in this chamber tonight, along with more than 24 Americans whose lives have been torn apart by gun violence. They deserve a vote. They deserve a vote. They deserve a vote. Gabby Giffords deserves a vote. The families of Newtown deserve a vote. The families of Aurora deserve a vote. The families of Oak Creek and Tucson and Blacksburg and the countless other communities ripped open by gun violence, they deserve a simple vote. They deserve a simple vote. Our actions will not prevent every senseless act of violence in this country. In fact, no laws, no initiatives, no administrative acts will perfectly solve all the challenges I've outlined tonight. But we were never sent here to be perfect. We were sent here to make what difference we can. to secure this nation, expand opportunity, uphold our ideals through the hard, often frustrating, but absolutely necessary work of self-government. We were sent here to look out for our fellow Americans, the same way they look out for one another, every single day, usually without fanfare, all across this country. We should follow their example. We should follow the example of a New York City nurse named Menchu Sanchez. When Hurricane Sandy plunged her hospital into darkness, she wasn't thinking about how her own home was faring. Her mind was on the 20 precious newborns in her care and the rescue plan she devised that kept them all safe. We should follow the example of a North Miami woman named Desaline Victor. When Desaline arrived at her polling place, she was told the wait to vote might be 6 hours. As time ticked by, her concern was not with her tired body or aching feet, but whether folks like her would get to have their say. Hour after hour, a throng of people stayed in line to support her. Because Desaline is 102 years old. And they erupted in cheers when she finally put on a sticker that read, "I voted." You know, there's Desaline. We should follow the example of a police officer named Brian Murphy. When a gunman opened fire on a Sikh temple in Wisconsin, Brian was the first to arrive, and he did not consider his own safety. He fought back until help arrived and ordered his fellow officers to protect the safety of the fellow Americans worshiping inside, even as he lay bleeding from 12 bullet wounds. And when asked how he did that, Brian said, "That's just the way we're made. That's just the way we're made." We may do different jobs and wear different uniforms and hold different views than the person beside us. But as Americans, we all share the same proud title. We are citizens. It's a word that doesn't just describe our nationality or our legal status. It describes the way we're made. It describes what we believe. It captures the enduring idea that this country only works when we accept certain obligations to one another and to future generations. That our rights are wrapped up in the rights of others. And that well into our 3rd century as a nation, it remains the task of us all, as citizens of these United States, to be the authors of the next great chapter of our American story. Thank you. God bless you. And God bless these United States of America.
We've been listening to President Barack Obama delivering the first State of the Union address of his 2nd term. I'm Melissa Block. The president spoke for just about an hour, the vast majority of that time on domestic issues, by my count about 11 minutes spent on foreign policy. And we'll be bringing you the Republican response from Florida Senator Marco Rubio when that happens in just a few moments. But let's talk now about the president's address. And to do that with some analysis, I'm joined once again by NPR's Mara Liasson, and also here with me in the studio are Andres Martinez, editorial director of the New America Foundation. Andres, welcome to you.
Thank you.
And also syndicated columnist Mona Charen, who worked in the Reagan White House and is a speech writer for Jack Kent. Mona, welcome to you.
Glad to be here.
Mona, there were a couple of points in that speech where you said, "I predicted this. I knew he was going to talk about this." What were you talking about?
Well, I did predict that he would say that the
that the economy has been damaged by the High Wire Act
You're listening to 89.3 KPCC. I'm Tammy Trujillo. Let's go live to KPCC's Frank Stoltz with the very latest on the situation up in the Big Bear area today between San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies and reportedly fired LAPD cop Christopher Dorner. Frank, what's the very latest there?
Well, awaiting news conference confirming whether or not indeed the man that police had a shootout with inside a cabin that is now burned down is indeed Christopher Dorner, and whether or not Christopher Dorner is dead. Several news organizations are reporting that he is dead. They are reporting that a body was pulled out from the burned out home earlier after this final chase after him. And right now, of course, news reporters are being held a couple of miles away from the actual incident, the actual cabin, but a news conference will be happening shortly. I have visited the cabin near Big Bear, where he allegedly held up for a couple of days, taking 2 hostages, a cabin that was literally right next to the original command post that was set up Thursday, a command post that was set up near his burned out truck that was found Thursday. So to summarize the events, what police and various reports are telling us is that he was in this condo, it was a condominium, and left it, and apparently one of the people inside who was tied up got away, called police, and police tracked him down. It's a little unclear at what point they tracked him down. A fish and game officer was said to have recognized him on the road shortly after that call came in, and then the chase down to the cabin that burned down. An extraordinary series of events, Tammy.
Absolutely, Frank. What's the tenure up there like right now? Are people still concerned about this? Because it hasn't been confirmed that this is indeed Christopher Dorner.
Well, all signs are pointing that this is Christopher Dorner, that it's highly likely that no one else would behave this way, run to a cabin, engage in a firefight with deputies, shooting 2 of them, one of them fatally. The atmosphere here, I think, is calmer. I talked to one neighbor who was just right down the street from the cabin where he was the condo where he was holed up. And he was expressing a lot of relief. And for the last few days, he said that he's been keeping his shotgun and his Glock 40 nearby. And what he did was quite interesting. He set up a mannequin in his front window as a diversion in case Dorner came to his door. As a diversion, perhaps, to let him know that somebody was home, or if he tried to shoot, that he would shoot the mannequin. So you see the extraordinary measures people were taking here to protect themselves.
You certainly can't blame them with what was going on up there. Frank Stoltz, thank you so much. That's Frank Stoltz reporting live from Big Bear, and we are awaiting a news conference with San Bernardino County Sheriff's spokesperson Cindy Bachman. When that happens, we will bring it to you. Now, it has been fast and furious. It's about 12:30 when all of this started breaking today. KPCC editor Nick Roman, you have been sitting here the whole time trying to keep up with it all.
So much has been happening, especially in the last few hours. Sources now say that the charred body was recovered from the cabin that burned today in the Seven Oaks area below Big Bear, but we do not know if that is Christopher Dorner. Authorities say they believe the person who died in the cabin is Dorner, a man who matched his description, apparently stole a truck today, got into a gunfight first, as Frank mentioned, with a state fish and wildlife officer and then San Bernardino County Sheriff's deputies. We know that one deputy was killed in that gunfight. A second was wounded in surgery now at Loma Linda Medical Center. The man believed to be Dorner abandoned the vehicle, ran to a cabin. Other law enforcement officers who arrived on the scene cornered him in that cabin, fired tear gas into the building. It caught fire. It has since burned to the ground. You probably saw the video from helicopters in the area as the cabin burned today. No one left that building as it burned. That was a confirmation that we received about an hour or so ago. And from that building now, authorities have recovered a body and will do various forensic tests to decide whether or not that actually was Christopher Dorner. But as Frank mentioned, all signs point that it was him.
Well, Nick, one of the questions I'm sure that's going to be asked over and over and over again, he was so close.
He was, yeah.
If this is correct, how this is all played out, he was literally in the background shot of every TV live shot in the background of the command post for all of these days.
Grant Slater, who's one of our KPCC photographers, is up there, and I've seen a photo that was taken where you can see the command post, and then in the background you can see that cabin. How he evaded detection, it's hard to say, but eventually something happened. Well, he was the story that's being told is that he was discovered in there by some cleaning people, and then everything began to unravel from there.
Absolutely fascinating story today. Just a note on the road closures up there. Highway 38 from Lake Williams to Valley of the Falls is now reopened, but only to residents of Valley of the Falls. And yes, you do need ID. Also, residents of Mountain Home Village and Angeles Oaks can get in. All other mountain roads are reopened with no restrictions. But again, 38, you must have ID. KPCC, time now 7:23.
KPCC supporters include
20th Century Fox, presenting Life of Pi, recipient of 11 Academy Award nominations, including Best Picture and Director, Ang Lee, now playing. Traffic supported by the Getzman Group, assisting businesses with financial and accounting project professionals. Online at goetzmangroup.com. The Weinstein Company, presenting Silver Linings Playbook, nominated for 2013 Academy Awards, including Best Director in Picture, from director David O. Russell, starring Bradley Cooper, Jennifer Lawrence, Robert De Niro, and Jackie Weaver, now playing.
I never have a problem with voting on things. So, again, I think the Senate's probably the arena. We'll see what actually comes out of the Senate. I think it's going to be much more difficult in the Senate than perhaps the President.
And President Obama has just wrapped up his State of the Union speech. Let's go live to discussion concerning what he spoke about here. You're listening to KPCC.
The re-election, they're concerned about the issue. So where they go, what they feel comfortable with, I don't know yet. But we'll see what comes out of the Senate, and I have no doubt the House will take it up. And, the issue will be thoroughly debated, as it should be.
Congressman Cole, we're waiting for the Republican response from Florida Senator Marco Rubio. There also, we should mention, is a Tea Party response being delivered tonight by Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. What does that say about the state of your party if you have two competing responses to the president?
Oh, I guess I'm not too worried about the state of the party. Look, sometimes when you're in opposition, and in this sense we are, the Democrats have the Senate and the White House, we have the House. But we have 30 governors and control of the House chamber, and the idea that we're somehow riven and divided, I think, is probably not the case. We're going through a reflective time after losing a very close election. Remember, the president was reelected with a lower percentage, lower popular vote, fewer electoral votes than he did when he won in 2008. So it doesn't sound to me like he's expanded his influence. He's probably deepened it, but actually in terms of percentage of people, he got a smaller vote than he did 4 years ago, and it was a much more competitive election. So we need to make some changes, and we need to do some soul searching, but we're not in an existential crisis on the Republican side of the aisle.
We have seen your speaker, though, John Boehner, have a really hard time getting his caucus to agree to measures that he supports. There's been a real division.
That's true. I think because our people are very intent on the debt crisis, and they want to go further. I mean, most of the votes we lose on things like that are because people are more adamant about dealing with things. It's not because they're moving toward the president. It's actually because they're moving away from it. I actually think the speaker deserves a lot of credit. I mean, he put the fiscal cliff deal on the floor and voted for it himself. He didn't have to do that. And he did the same thing with Hurricane Sandy. He didn't vote for it in that case. And speakers don't normally vote. He put it on the floor, and Eric Cantor voted for that. So I think we're willing to work with the president. I think we've demonstrated that. But look, we have political parties for a reason. We have competing visions and competing values. So there's going to be disagreement.
Congressman Cole, thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for the invitation.
That's Republican Congressman Tom Cole of Oklahoma. Let me go back here in the studio to Maura Elias and also Mona Chairman Andres Martinez before we turn to the Republican response from Marco Rubio. And Maura, highlight for you of the speech, anything surprising in there for you?
Well, I guess what was surprising is that I think he did change his tone. It's interesting, usually inaugural addresses are the time when you say a new chapter is beginning and you reach across the aisle and you talk about a time of renewal, and then you can be more partisan in a State of the Union address. I think he did the opposite. I think he really dialed it back. I don't know if he did it in response to the reviews he got for the inaugural address, but he started right out with the budget and the deficit. Many Republicans thought that he was giving the back of his hand to entitlement reform in the inaugural address, and he didn't care about it anymore. But he did say, those of us who care deeply about programs like Medicare, speaking to fellow Democrats, must embrace the need for modest reforms. Otherwise, our retirement programs will crowd out the investments that Democrats want for future generations. So I thought that was important. It sounds like he's signaling he still wants a deal. He didn't say specifically what he'd do to Medicare beyond what he's already proposed. He didn't kind of poke at Paul Ryan and talk about a nation of takers. He tried to give a kind of gracious shout out to Governor Romney when he talked about raising the minimum wage to $9. So I thought that he was trying to offer some olive branches to the other side.
Mona Charen, did you hear those same olive branches that Mara's talking about?
Well, what strikes me is that there was nothing in this speech where he was dealing with the economy, where he focused on what the country most desperately needs, which is growth. This president doesn't really know how to promote growth. He thought he was doing it in his first 4 years. He thought the stimulus and all of the rest of the government and what he likes to call investments, would by now have created a thriving economy. And instead, the economy is desperately, desperately struggling. And so he did not offer anything that will promote the kind of growth that will make those entitlement cuts and reforms palatable, or at least possible, for the vast majority of the American people.
Andres Martinez, I think you're going to get the last word before we hear from Senator Rubio here.
I heard a lot of talk of promoting growth, whether it was the trade agenda that Republicans traditionally backed, whether it was on energy. He pointed out that corporate profits have never been higher. So the growth is there. It hasn't been spread equitably, but it's definitely there. And I think his whole speech was framed around ways to get the growth rate, which is modest. And he talked about how we cleared the rubble from the crisis, which I thought was a nice way to frame it. To take us to a more ambitious, robust, 3% GDP growth as opposed to something approximating 2.
Thanks so much. That's Andres Martinez, editorial director with the New America Foundation. Also heard from syndicated columnist Mona Charen and NPR's Mara Elias. And we're going to go now to the Republican response I mentioned from Florida Senator Marco Rubio, 41 years old, first-term senator from Florida, a Cuban-American, son of immigrants, former Speaker of the Florida House of Representatives, and a darling of the Tea Party, who has now been recently on the cover of Time magazine, who calls him a Republican savior. He will be delivering the Republican response to the President's State of the Union address. Here's Senator Rubio.
Good evening. I'm Marco Rubio. I'm blessed to represent Florida in the United States Senate. Let me begin by congratulating President Obama on the start of his second term. Tonight, I have the honor of responding to a State of the Union address on behalf of my fellow Republicans. And I'm especially honored to be addressing our brave men and women serving in the armed forces and in diplomatic posts around the world. You may be thousands of miles away, but you are always in our prayers. The State of the Union address is always a reminder of how unique America is. See, for much of human history, most people were trapped in stagnant societies where a tiny minority always stayed on top, and no one else even had a chance. But America's exceptional because we believe that every life, at every stage, is precious, and that everyone everywhere has a God-given right to go as far as their talents and hard work will take them. Like most Americans, for me, this ideal is personal. My parents immigrated here in pursuit of the opportunity to improve their life and to give their children the chance at an even better one. They made it to the middle class, my dad working as a bartender, my mother as a cashier and a maid. I didn't inherit any money from them, but I inherited something far better. The real opportunity to accomplish my dreams. This opportunity to make it to the middle class or beyond, no matter where you start out in life, it isn't bestowed on us from Washington. It comes from a vibrant, free economy where people can risk their own money to open a business. And when they succeed, they hire more people, who in turn invest or spend their money they make helping others start a business and create jobs. Presidents in both parties, from John F. Kennedy to Ronald Reagan, have known that our free enterprise economy is the source of our middle-class prosperity. But President Obama, he believes it's the cause of our problems. That the economic downturn happened because our government didn't tax enough, spend enough, or control enough. And therefore, as you heard tonight, his solution to virtually every problem we face is for Washington to tax more, borrow more, and spend more. This idea that our problems were caused by a government that was too small, it's just not true. In fact, a major cause of our recent downturn was a housing crisis created by reckless government policies. And the idea that more taxes and more government spending is the best way to help hardworking middle-class taxpayers, that's an old idea that's failed every time it's been tried. More government isn't going to help you get ahead. It's going to hold you back. More government isn't going to create more opportunities. It's going to limit them. And more government isn't going to inspire new ideas, new businesses, and new private sector jobs. It's going to create uncertainty. Because more government breeds complicated rules and laws that small businesses can't afford to follow. Because more government raises taxes on employers, who then pass the costs on to their employees through fewer hours, lower pay, and even layoffs. And because many government programs that claim to help the middle class often end up hurting. For example, Obamacare. It was supposed to help middle-class Americans afford health insurance. But now some people are losing the health insurance they were happy with. And because Obamacare created expensive requirements for companies with more than 50 employees, now many of these companies aren't hiring. Not only that, they're being forced to lay people off and switch from full-time employees to part-time workers. Now, does this mean that there's no role for government? Of course it does. It plays a crucial part in keeping us safe, enforcing rules and providing some security against the risks of modern life. But government's role is wisely limited by the Constitution, and it can't play its essential role when it ignores those limits. There are valid reasons to be concerned about the president's plan to grow our government. But anytime anyone opposes the president's agenda, he and his allies usually respond by falsely attacking their motives. When we point out that no matter how many job-killing laws we pass, our government can't control the weather, he accuses us of wanting dirty water and dirty air. When we suggest we strengthen our safety net programs by giving states more flexibility to manage them, he accuses us of wanting to leave the elderly and the disabled to fend for themselves. And tonight, he even criticized us for refusing to raise taxes to delay military cuts that were his idea in the first place. But his favorite attack of all is that those of us who don't agree with him, that we only care about rich people. Mr. President, I still live in the same working-class neighborhood I grew up in. My neighbors aren't millionaires. They're retirees who depend on Social Security and Medicaid. They're workers who have to get up early tomorrow morning and go to work to pay the bills. They're immigrants who came here because they were stuck in poverty in the countries where the government dominated the economy. The tax increases and deficit spending you propose will hurt middle-class families. It will cost them their raises. It will cost them their benefits. It may even cost some of them their jobs. And it will hurt seniors because it does nothing to save Medicare and Social Security. So, Mr. President, I don't oppose your plan because I want to protect the rich. I oppose your plans because I want to protect my neighbors. Hard-working, middle-class Americans who don't need us to come up with a plan to grow the government. They need a plan to grow the middle class. Economic growth is the best way to help the middle class. Unfortunately, our economy actually shrank during the last 3 months of 2012. But if we can get the economy to grow at just 4% a year, it would create middle-class jobs. And it would reduce our deficits by almost $4 trillion over the next decade. Tax increases can't do this. Raising taxes won't create private sector jobs, and there's no realistic tax increase that could lower our deficits by almost $4 trillion. That's why I hope the president will abandon his obsession with raising taxes and instead work with us to achieve real growth in our economy. One of the best ways to encourage growth is through our energy industry. Of course, solar and wind energy should be a part of our energy portfolio. But God also blessed us with America with abundant coal, oil, and natural gas. Instead of wasting more taxpayer money on so-called clean energy companies like Solyndra, let's open up more federal lands for safe and responsible exploration. And let's reform our energy regulations so that they're reasonable and based on common sense. If we can grow our energy industry, it will make us energy independent. It will create middle-class jobs, and it will help bring manufacturing back from places like China. Simplifying our tax code will also help the middle class because it will make it easier for small businesses to hire and grow. And we agree with the president. We should lower our corporate tax rate, which is one of the highest in the world, so that companies will start bringing their money and their jobs back here from overseas. We can also help grow our economy if we have a legal immigration system that allows us to attract and assimilate the world's best and brightest. We need a responsible, permanent solution to the problem of those who are here illegally. But first, we must follow through on the broken promises of the past to secure our borders and force our borders. Helping the middle class grow will also require an education system that gives people the skills today's jobs entail and the knowledge that tomorrow's world will require. We need to incentivize local school districts to offer more advanced placement courses and more vocational and career training. And we need to give all parents, especially the parents of children with special needs, the opportunity to send their children to the school of their choice. And because college tuition costs have grown so fast, we need to change the way we pay for higher education. Now, I believe in federal financial aid. I couldn't have gone to college without it. It's not just about spending more money. It's also about strengthening and modernizing. The 21st century workforce should not be forced to accept 20th century education solutions. Today's students aren't only 18-year-olds. They're returning veterans. They're single parents who decide to get the education they need to earn a decent wage. And they're workers who have lost jobs that are never coming back and need to be retrained. We need student aid that does not discriminate against programs that non-traditional students rely on, like online courses, degree programs that give you credit for work experience. When I finished school, I owed over $100,000 in student loans, a debt I paid off just a few months ago. Today, many graduates face massive student loans. We must give students more information on the costs and benefits of the student loans they're taking out. All of these measures are key to helping grow the economy. But we won't be able to sustain a vibrant middle class unless we solve our debt problem. Every dollar our government borrows is money that isn't being invested to create jobs. And the uncertainty created by the debt is one reason why many businesses aren't hiring. The president loves to blame the debt on President Bush, but President Obama has created more debt in 4 years than his predecessor did in 8. The real cause of our debt is that our government has been spending $1 trillion more than it takes in every year. That's why we need a balanced budget now. The biggest obstacle to balancing the budget are programs where spending is already locked in. One of these programs is Medicare. It's especially important to me. It provided my father the care he needed to battle cancer and ultimately to die with it. And it pays for the care my mother receives every year. I would never support any changes to Medicare that would hurt seniors like my mother. But anyone who's in favor of leaving Medicare exactly the way it is right now is in favor of bankrupting it. Republicans have offered a detailed and credible plan that helps save Medicare without hurting today's retirees. Instead of playing politics for Medicare, when is the president going to offer his detailed plan to save it? Tonight would have been a good time for him to do it. Of course, we face other challenges as well. We were all heartbroken by the recent tragedy in Connecticut. We must effectively deal with the rise of violence in our country. But unconstitutionally undermining the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans is not the way to do it. On foreign policy, America continues to be indispensable to the role of global property and safeguarding human rights. The world is a better place when America is the strongest nation. But we can't remain powerful if we don't have an economy to fight for. In the short time that I've been here in Washington, nothing has frustrated me more than false choices like the one the president laid out tonight. The choice isn't just between big government or big business. What we need is an accountable, efficient, and effective government that allows small and new businesses to create more middle-class jobs. We don't have to raise taxes to avoid the president's devastating cuts to our military. Republicans have passed a plan that replaces these cuts with responsible spending reforms. In order to balance our budget, the choice doesn't have to be either higher taxes or dramatic benefit cuts for those in need. Instead, we should grow our economy so that we can create new taxpayers, not new taxes. And so our government can afford to help those who truly cannot help themselves. And the truth is, every problem can't be solved by the government. Many are caused by the moral breakdown in our society. And the answer to these challenges lie primarily in our families and our faiths, not our politicians. Despite our differences, I know that both Republicans and Democrats love America. I pray we can come together to solve our problems, because the choices before us could not be more important. If we can get our economy healthy again, our children will be the most prosperous Americans ever. If we do not, we will forever be known as the generation responsible for America's decline. At a time when one showdown after another ends in short-term deals that do little or nothing about our real problems, some are starting to believe that our government leaders just can't or won't make the right choices anymore. But our strength has never come from the White House or the Capitol. It's always come from our people. A people united by the American idea that if you have a dream and you're willing to work hard, nothing should be impossible. Americans have always celebrated and been inspired by those who succeed. But it's the dreams of those who are still trying to make it that sets our nation apart. Tonight, all across this land, parents will hold their newborn children in their arms for the first time. For many of these parents, life has not gone the way they had planned. Maybe they were born into circumstances they found difficult to escape. Maybe they've made some mistakes along the way. Maybe their young mother's all alone with the father of their child long gone. But tonight, when they look into the eyes of their child for the first time, their lives will change forever. Because in those eyes, they will see what my parents saw in me, what your parents saw in you. They will see all the hopes and dreams they once had for themselves. This dream of a better life for their children, it's the hope of parents everywhere. Politicians here and throughout the world have long promised that more government can make those dreams come true. But we Americans have always known better. From our earliest days, we embraced economic liberty. And because we did, America remains one of the few places on earth where dreams like these even have a chance. Each time our nation has faced great challenges, what has kept us together was our shared hope for a better life. Now, let that hope bring us together again to solve the challenges of our time and write the next chapter of the amazing story of the greatest nation man has ever known. Thank you for listening. God bless all of you.
And you've been listening to Florida Senator Marco Rubio with the Republican response to President Obama's State of the Union address tonight. Well, it has been a wild day here in Southern California as the 6-day manhunt for fired LAPD officer Christopher Dorner apparently has come to an end. KPCC's Rena Palta joins us now live from Angeles Oaks up near Big Bear. She's about 6 miles from the cabin that burned to the ground a short time ago. A charred body found in the rubble, that body thought to be that of Chris Dorner. Rena, what's the situation there now? It's dark up there. It's getting cold.
It's pretty cold. It's getting pretty dark. We've seen a lot of patrol vehicles and other sorts of law enforcement vehicles coming down the mountain. But we haven't yet gotten any confirmation from San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department that they have indeed entered the cabin and found any kind of body. So that's not something we've been able to confirm up here yet.
Okay, Rena, we do have confirmation from AP that a body has been discovered there. Are you seeing a lot of law enforcement still at your location, or has it kind of died down? What's the scene?
There's a roadblock up here still. There's a lot of law enforcement at the scene I'm at, and a lot of law enforcement has been coming down the mountain away from the scene. So, yeah, still a heavy presence on the mountain as far as I can tell.